What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto was taken as the secret husband of the Daimyo's daughter? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. Naruto was packing when she came. He'd been hoping that maybe she wouldn't hear about it until it was too late. It wasn't as though they'd had much contact in the last year, ever since he was removed from her team. Unfortunately, nothing had gone the way he'd planned so far. Why would it start now? He felt her presence move up to his door. Naruto had been tracking her for the last mile, his sensory abilities making sneaking up on him all but impossible. Especially for her. If he was actively looking, her chakra stood out to him like a burning piece of magnesium. The door opened, a chill gust of wind and a blast of icy rain momentarily slipping through the portal. There was no light on, and she didn't bother rectifying that. He could see in the dark, and so could she. He because of Kurama's influence, and she, well, suffice it to say for now that she could. Naruto didn't turn, he didn't dare, and the uneasy fluctuation of her chakra answered all his questions he could possibly ask. If there was to be conversation, she would need to begin it. Is it true? Her voice wavered. It took all of Naruto's willpower not to turn and sweep her into his arms, to comfort her. But he knew what he needed to do, he only hoped he was strong enough. Wordlessly Naruto nodded. I don't understand, after everything you've done, why? He didn't answer. How? What possible pretense could there be for this? I've grown too powerful, they fear me, just like they always have. Gomen, Naruto, I wish there was something I could do to change them. I still don't get it, what happened out there? You saved the world, you killed Madara, and you stopped the Jubi. Why is Sasuke, a traitor, worshipped as a hero? Why is Sasuke the Rokudame? I know why you said we couldn't be together, but can't you tell me, you had to let someone in? Even you can't do it alone. Please, not many believe that I did those things. Whose word would they take, the demon brat? He practically spat the words, or their precious, last Uchiha. Never mind that he betrayed the village, never mind that Sasuke Teme threw his lot in with Orochimaru. Never mind that he killed hundreds of innocents. His voice and heart broke. Never mind that my father and mother died saving this place while his committed treason. He is still worth more than me in their eyes. Naruto fell to his knees. It was too much. He had been lying for too long. He had been strong for too long, for too many people. It was all he could do for the last 3 years not to burst into tears, or into an incandescent rage that threatened to annihilate the very place he had nearly died to save so many times. I used to think that if I could show my worth, that if I saved them enough times, that if I became strong enough, that they'd have to respect me. She cut him off with a soft touch to his shoulder. Naruto took her hand in his and pressed it up to his cheek. Tell me. Her voice was soft and polite, like always. But underneath the velvet tones was steel. She was done waiting and would brook no arguments. I waited for 2 years for you to come to me. Tell me now, damn it. Flashback 3 years prior to present. Naruto exhaled loudly, exhausted. It was over. Tens of thousands had died for the insanity of one man. Innocents and shinobi alike had fallen faster than ever before. But finally, it was over. Obito was dead. Edo Madara was dead. Kabuto and Orochimaru had been consumed by the departing soul of the Kyuubi. And all the Biju had been freed from this plane of existence. Their immortal souls finally granted peace after hundreds of years. In his spent state, Naruto didn't notice the man behind him until it was too late, and everything went black. He woke in his least favorite place. The hospital. The familiar scent told him one thing, at least he was in Konoha. The bright light hurt his eyes, the sterile scent burned his nostrils, and then there was some weird screeching. Oh wait. The screeching appeared to be a person in the distance, Sakura. No, he groaned, turning over and covering his ears. Of all the medics to survive and be on duty, it had to be her. He couldn't believe he'd had a thing for her for so long. She'd shown her true colors, she was willing to use whatever she could to get whatever she wanted. She'd ripped his heart in two, pretending to love him, just to get close to Sasuke. Thankfully sage training allowed him to see through that. When someone lied, even if they were skilled enough to mask the facial tells, their chakra rippled. It was so slight that not even the Byakugan could see it, but a toad sage could. Then she'd said that she wanted to kill Sasuke, another lie. She had the perfect opportunity, but only revealed their locations and ruined any chance of bringing him in. Naruto was through with the pink-haired harpy. The creak of hinges, however, revealed that she was not through with him. "Oh Naruto, you're awake." He groaned again. "How long was I out?" Might as well get his bearings if he had to endure this torture. "About a week. Sasuke-kun came and saved you from Madara, and then brought you back." Absent-mindedly Naruto nodded. Her words took time to filter through his ears to a disbelieving brain. "Yeah, wait, what?" He was confused. Something inside felt wrong. This whole situation felt wrong. Something terrible was about to happen, and as usual, he would be on the receiving end. "Yeah," she smiled brightly, and Naruto could feel the breath of the Shinigami on his spine, the omen of a world of hope about to come crashing down. "Sasuke-kun found you losing against Madara, then he saved you, killed Madara, and saved the world. I knew Sasuke-kun was a hero all along. He only went with Orochimaru because he knew that the Akatsuki would attack and he wanted to get strong enough to defend Konoha." That is a lie. He could barely control his rage. It all made sense. The presence behind him, the sudden blackness, the memory of a stinging pain in his heart. "I killed Madara and Obito and Zetsu several thousand times over. Sasuke came up and attacked me. That cowardly Teme stabbed me in the back. I'll bet the Teme thought me dead. I'll bet when he rocked up my survival surprised him, but he couldn't kill me in front of you all. Not with the other cages there, not with B and Gaara." He could feel Kurama's power bubbling beneath the surface. A gift for freeing him, the Kyuubi had left his chakra behind. While in and of itself the Biju chakra no longer caused him to lose control, when he was naturally angry, it would answer the call. Her eyes narrowed, and Sakura glared. "After all this time you're still jealous of Sasuke-kun, you're such a baka." And with that, she left. It hurt. Naruto knew that she was still hung up on him, but to immediately take the word of a traitor over his. To accuse him of jealousy, when he was infinitely stronger. When he had done so much and received so little in return. Perhaps he was jealous, but not of Sasuke's skill, nor he certainly wasn't jealous of that. He was jealous of the silver platter that the Uchiha's life seemed to be permanently perched upon. Sure, his brother killed his family, but after that what hardship had he seen? None. The council had been fawning over him for so long. The people worshipped the ground the bastard walked on. Naruto himself had been blind for so long. So desperate to have his friend back that he failed to realize that Sasuke had never been a friend. That Sasuke was incapable of anything beyond blind ambition and hatred. Naruto didn't waste further time. Ignoring the dull aches of abused muscles, he dressed, pulling his clothes on with frantic haste. It couldn't be true, there was no way. Tsunade wouldn't let this happen, she would know the truth. He dove out of the window, rolling briefly before a chakra-enhanced leap propelled him onto the rooftops. The world whipped by in a blur, shingles shattering underneath his feet, unable to take the strain. He pushed himself as fast as he could without the Kyuubi's chakra or senjutsu. In barely a few minutes he found himself by the Hokage Tower. However, Naruto was not alone. A scaffold had been erected, a speaker set up. The council stood in plain sight of thousands of the citizens of Konohagakure. There was an excited buzz, rippling through the crowd. Clearly they knew something that Naruto, comatose for a week, did not. A figure stepped up to the microphone. One of the nameless members of the civilian council that had for so long toadied up to Danzo, apparently willing to follow him even after death. "People of the Leaf, we are gathered here to celebrate our victory over the Akatsuki. We are gathered to celebrate the one man, who above all others, brought about our triumph. A shinobi who knows no equal, whose power strikes fear in the hearts of the foreign nations, sons and daughters of Konohagakure, I present to you, the hero of the elemental nations, slayer of Uchiha Madara, vanquisher of the Jubi, Uchiha Sasuke." To add further insult, Sasuke was garbed in a familiar set of robes, with a certain hat placed upon his head. After the unfortunate death of Lady Tsunade from injuries sustained during the war, I present to you the Rokudame Hokage. Flashback end. Just like that, everything I had ever worked for was taken away. You know much of the rest. The bastard passed a law that forbade Jinchuriki from ever advancing past Genin. Then I was confined to the village, then to the Namikaze estate. I was forbidden from marrying, from reproducing. One by one my liberties were taken away. And now, it was too much. 3 years of emotional torment, far worse than even the shunning he had received as a child, came crashing down. Only a thin pair of arms around his waist kept him sane. Only a chest firmly pressed up against his back let him know that all was not lost into darkness. Only a cheek pressed into his neck, the tickle of silken hair against his jaw. She gave him the strength to go through his pain, to keep speaking over the sobs of anguish. They've taken my parents from me. They've stripped me of the Namikaze name, even Uzumaki. I am now just Naruto. Apparently DNA tests say that I am the child of neither Uzumaki Kushina nor Namikaze Minato. A breath shuddered into his lungs. I am to present myself in 3 days to have my chakra permanently sealed, to be sterilized, and to be banished. And will you? Her voice was hard, high. Without a warning he was wrenched to his feet and spun around. 2 small and delicate hands grabbed the sides of his head and pulled it down into a passionate kiss, a pair of soft lips moving slowly but decisively against him. Naruto was still shocked when he was pushed away and a slap rang out against his cheek. He looked at her, taking in her hair, long and dark, her skin, pale and smooth, belying just how deadly of a kunoichi she was. And her eyes, her angry eyes, he was taken thoroughly aback. He had not expected to be slapped. Naruto knew she was far more fiery than she let on in public, their missions together had shown that, but she seemed furious. Hanabi-chan? He was stuttering, sounding more like his loved sister Hinata than anyone else. You will do no such thing. If her voice held hints of steel before, now as was hard enough to make Diamond feel like marshmallow, melted marshmallow. Damn it, Naruto, you can't give up. Her hands balled up at her side, her nails were cut too fine to draw blood, but her chakra glowed dangerously around her fingertips. Hanabi activated her Byakugan wordlessly, breathing deeply to regain her composure. She took Naruto by the hand and led him deeper into the Namikaze estate. She had never been there, it would have drawn too many questions, teammates or not. When you had eyes that could see the walls, it didn't really matter. It also revealed something else. Complicated fuinjutsu covered the entire exterior of the house. No one could see or hear anything from outside. And that was if they got past the various blood and trap seals that littered the grounds. Hanabi almost snorted. If Naruto wasn't such a loyal shinobi, there was no way that the Anbu could evict him from these estates. But something was wrong. Naruto had always been loyal, it was one of the things that had drawn Hanabi to him, but this was something else. It was insanity. The last few weeks, he hadn't been the Naruto she knew. Although they ostensibly had minimal interaction, and even that just of the kind associated with ex-teammates, she kept an eye on him. She knew he kept an eye on her. For the first time, she concentrated her Byakugan on him, truly looked. It nearly blinded her. His chakra was immense, far larger than even a Jinchuriki's had a right to be. But that was to be expected, with nothing but D-rank missions assigned to him. Naruto had thrust himself into training. In the last 3 years, he had undergone 3,000. Hanabi did not doubt that if Naruto wanted to lay waste to the entire village, there was no longer anyone strong enough to stop him. But as he had lost hope. Everything and everyone had been taken from him. But perhaps she could help. She had come upon hearing the news from Hinata, through Kiba, her sister's husband and current clan head of the Inuzuka. Kiba, along with Shikamaru, was one of Naruto's last allies. Her initial plan was to persuade him to stand up to the council, something he had not done since the suspicious death in her eyes, of the Lady Tsunade. Something quickened within her heart. She knew what she had to do. And she had been granted the perfect opportunity to do it. Her bastard of a father would never believe that the Hanabi in the bed at her home was a shadow clone. After all, no Hyuga could possibly have learned that technique. She led Naruto into his own bedroom and sat him down with the hint of a smirk gracing her lips. The kiss and slap still had him a little stunned, which Hanabi had no problem taking advantage of as it was for his own good. She could see his shadow clones roaming the house, continuing their task of packing his belongings. The smirk blossomed when Hanabi noticed the jutsu scrolls they were sealing away, along with other heirlooms. Perhaps Naruto wasn't going to roll over after all. Perhaps his shadow clones were sick of the placid attitude of the boss. Rational thought finally returned to Naruto, or at least as rational as he had been these past few weeks, and his location was made known to his conscious self. Hanabi-chan, what? He was cut off by a pair of fingers gently pressing his lips. Shush you. It's my turn to talk. Tomorrow I'm going to chew you out. Naruto could feel truth in her words, and was slightly worried, but he also felt the beginnings of a, but, there it was, tonight you need help. Something is wrong with you, Naruto. The Naruto I know, the Naruto who was able to make me see through the years of lies and hatred of a fool, the Naruto I love, would never give up. You are not going to report to the council. My shadow clones have had words with yours. They've sealed everything. Tomorrow, you will leave Konoha in possession of all that belongs to you. Naruto agreed so far, but he could sense more was to come. Hanabi just oozed mischief. It resonated with the king of pranksters within him. And I will be going with you. Hanabi-chan, no. I won't let you abandon your life, not for me. All of a sudden she was angry again. Damn it, Naruto, you are my life. What else do I have? From birth my father hated me. I'm the reason my mother died. He may have thought Hinata was weak, but he hated me. Every day he beat the emotion out of my being, trying to make me a soulless machine. He forced me to hurt my Nei-san, the only person at that point who actually cared about me. Do you think I don't know she was holding back, that she was strong enough to let me hit her? My own father used me as a tool to destroy my sister. To punish me for killing mother, and to punish Hinata for looking like her. In a shot Hanabi was in his arms, her head flush against his chest as his hands rubbed up and down her back, a soothing white noise issuing forth from his lips. She hadn't seen Naruto move, even with the Byakugan, but he was standing there, his own pain pushed aside as comforting her became everything. Naruto smiled wryly, his eyes wet as a fog fell away from his mind. He thought clearly once more. Naruto stumbled, his mind felt clearer, his memories of the last week as if viewed through a misted glass. But they were real. How else would Hanabi be in his arms, something he had dreamed about for the last 2 years? Hey Firecracker-chan, a murmur in her ear, and he felt her freeze in his arms before she sobbed in relief. Naruto, you're back. He finished filtering through the memories, then the memories of his recently dispelled clones. I missed you so much. I don't want them to take you away from me again. A year is far too long. He remembered that too. That had happened when he was awake, but he had no legal position to stand on. When he had been banned from any promotion, the council had assigned him to another genin team, where Hanabi just happened to be. They had served together for 2 years. After one, Naruto had fallen in love with her, even though she had been just 14 at the time, and he 17. Everything he thought about her had been wrong. For years he had just seen Hinata's posh little sister, prim and proper in every way, arrogant to a fault. It, much like the village view of him as a demon, had been wrong, dead wrong. Just under a year after that, while alone with her on assignment, a surprise attack left him with a hole through his chest. A rakery, aimed at her by an unknown assassin. He in turn left them with a slash on the leg as they fled. Flashback. 1 year prior to present time. Naruto, listen to me, Kami, please don't die. Naruto heard her panic, heard the fear in Hanabi's voice. He wanted to tell her it was alright, that such a wound wouldn't hurt him. The rakery had gone through his chest, bursting both lungs and his heart. He had to air to tell her, and she was far too upset and shocked to notice the flesh knitting back together. Hanabi heard her own voice, it was weak and pathetic. She couldn't breathe. It was as if all the oxygen had been torn forcefully from her lungs, nothing made sense. Naruto was invincible, he couldn't die. And he certainly wouldn't get caught by surprise, unless… Oh Kami, Naruto, please tell me you didn't take this for me. She was racked by sobs and hiccups, her body spasming against his shoulders, her tears falling from her eyes to his neck. I never got to tell you. Oh Kami. Naruto, I love you. Please don't die. Hanabi, her eyes screwed shut, not wanting to see the hole blasted straight through the man she loved, fumbled around, finding Naruto's face with her fingertips. She clumsily pressed her lips to his, expecting them to be still. He was breathing, barely and faintly, but still breathing. Hanabi leaned back, looking into his eyes, the azure depths staring back up at her, his whiskers crinkled in a smile. A shuddering hand rubbed a thumb absently along her cheek. A little thing like this couldn't kill me, have a look, little firecracker. It was true, the gaping wound had completely healed, leaving yet another scar. I still have my healing factor, one of Kurama's gifts. Then it dawned on her. Naruto, about B. His thumb found her lips, slipping between them and rubbing her teeth. It was one of the stranger ways she had been silenced, but oddly pleasurable. "I've been in love with you for quite some time, little firecracker." He smiled at her again before a hacking cough coated both of their faces in his blood. Oops. Slowly but surely they found their faces moving together. Hanabi, looking this time, saw his lips centimeters from hers. Then the distance was gone, and through the tangy taste of blood she kissed Naruto. Until when 30 seconds later the moment was ruined on account of him being unconscious. Neither noticed the same cloaked figure that had nearly killed them hanging in the shadows. Naruto awoke in the hospital, the only place he ever seemed to wake up in. There was no one to greet him, there never was any more. Not since Sasuke's inauguration. The hospital staff just left him to find his own way out. It was never particularly hard to do so. As he left, a complication arose. 4 Anbu leapt from the buildings, surrounding him with weapons drawn. He had never been particularly fond of the Anbu, too many of them were not to be trusted. "Demon, the Hokage summons you." Naruto groaned. What did the Teme want know, and why couldn't people accept that the Kyuubi was as good as dead now, moved on, gone to the fox pen in the sky, whatever they wanted to call it? Flanked by the Anbu, Naruto made his way to the Hokage tower. Just what he needed after having someone's arm. Wait. That attack had been a rakery. And it wasn't the first time he'd had an arm through his chest. It didn't matter anyway. Everyone was against him. A memory of a bloody kiss flitted into view. Well, maybe not everyone. "Hokage-sama, you called for me." Naruto deadpanned, his voice betraying nothing, his face cold as stone. Naruto had mastered his emotions enough to appear strong in public. Sure, at night he cried himself to sleep, all alone, betrayed by those he considered friends. But Naruto would be damned before he let Sasuke know he'd gotten to him. "Hi Dobi, I did." Naruto, in spite of appearances, was livid. Everything in him wanted to tear Sasuke apart, to rend him limb from limb. He no longer needed a Biju to provide rage, he had that in spades. He wanted to wipe that arrogant smirk from his smug little face, and he could, oh he could. "We are withdrawing you from the shinobi forces and confining you to your quarters except for when requested by the council. Surrender your headband immediately. I have business to attend to, I trust you can show yourself out." With that, he left. As Naruto reached up to his forehead, he recalled something strange he had seen. Sasuke had been limping. Flashback end. What even happened? "Genjutsu," Hanabi answered, a strong one. "You've been acting strangely for 3 weeks. I was worried, then I heard about what they were going to do. Hinata told me, Kiba and Shikamaru tried to shoot it down." "You aren't alone, Hanabi." His voice was dangerously low. "We haven't seen each other in a year. How would you know how I've been acting?" He smiled. She breathed a sigh of relief. No doubt Naruto was setting up a joke. "Been taking a leaf out of Hinata's book and stalking me?" Luckily Hinata had grown out of that phase and moved on. He liked her, but not in that way. Hanabi laughed. Kami, it felt good to do that. She'd had so little reason to laugh lately and she doubted much was different for Naruto in that respect. "Shut up Naruto." She refused to call him Naruto-kun. It sounded weird to her. His name alone, unadorned by the proprieties of a society that shunned him, that was the best sound in the world. "I know you broke parole, sneaking around in sage mode." She couldn't see him, her face nuzzled in his chest as it was. But Hanabi could smell him looking sheepish. "Kami, I missed you, but now you're back. And I'll be damned if I let you leave me now. It's been hell keeping father away with suitors." She spat it like poison, and nearly gagged. They'd all been 40 or more, and fat. And all Hyuga elders. She knew that she was hot. Her feelings of inadequacy next to the far curvier figure of her Nei-san were quickly silenced by the way the perverted male half looked at her when they thought she wasn't looking, but that was weird and creepy. "Hi, I'm back." Naruto just kept rubbing her back, enjoying the feel of her head tucked in the crook of his neck, her delicate scent, like fresh lilies, filling his nostrils. He'd gone so long without pleasant physical contact, he barely could find words to say. "Kami, I love you. I missed you so much. I wish I'd been brave enough to meet you. That day, it was a message. If I tried anything they'd kill you." The man who attacked. It was Sasuke, I'm sure of it. Hanabi just snorted derisively. "I know. Not sure how he found out we loved each other before we did, but there you go. I'm just glad he didn't tell my father. We'll be out of his reach tomorrow." But tonight, she was done playing and slowly pulled the sash of her kimono, eschewing the item of clothing. He just stared as she stood in just underwear, taking in her small, but undoubtedly womanly, figure in the barely lit room as she made her intentions clear. Naruto was shocked as Hanabi took charge, pushing him down onto the bed and straddling his waist. It felt good, damn did it feel good. She began to rock against him, pushing their nether regions together through the fabric separating them, and sending pleasure arcing through both parties. A tiny part of him told him to stop her, he told it to go jump off a cliff. She leaned over slowly, licking her lips as she felt him react, her breath strained in anticipation. Tonight, she continued, her voice so quiet that Naruto nearly burst an eardrum to hear it. Tonight you are going to make love to me. I want you to make me forget how angry I am at those bastards for making me wait a year for this. I want you to make me forget my own name. Then her lips met his, her tongue sliding over his upper lip as he opened his mouth for her. The wet muscle glided in, playing with his in small flicking motions, inexperienced yet experimental. Naruto almost died of embarrassment when he moaned from her various ministrations, but he was going to enjoy this. Naruto couldn't speak for her. But Hanabi made him forget many things, except her name, with many fervent repetitions of it. No could doubt his knowledge of that. It was only later when the irony of it hit him. He was the male, the 3 years older male. Society stated that he was only after one thing, yet Hanabi needed to spell it out for him. Oh well, society could go fuck itself for all he cared. Naruto groaned slightly. He had been awakened by one of his many least favorite things, morning sunlight. It was a horrible pervasive thing, ignoring whatever you placed in its path. It would cut through curtains and drapes, although he was pretty sure they were the same thing, sneak under the crack in the door, and utilize a variety of other dastardly means to assault his poor unsuspecting eyes. His body immediately informed him that something was different. There was a weight on his chest. Not the, I've done something terrible and can't stop thinking about it, weight, but the, oh my Kami there is a naked girl on top of me, type of weight. Hanabi was nuzzled into his side, her hair draped across his torso as she used him as a pillow. The sight made all the grumpiness fade away. The last night settled firmly in his brain. Many images filed in the things I don't want to ever forget folder. But now, looking at her blissfully sleeping form in the sunlight, she was so Kami damned beautiful. The blonde decided he didn't want to wake up just yet. As he drifted off to sleep once more, his right hand gently stroked the ivory skin of her back. Hanabi awoke in a good mood. Better than she had felt in, well ever. She had him back finally, and he had himself back. She wasn't going to let the machinations of petty men get in the way of her happiness. All the council members spoke of how it was the privilege of the shinobi to sacrifice themselves for the village. She wanted to snort but couldn't be bothered. She'd never seen any of the civilian council making sacrifices. And a sacrifice was willing. Screwing over a member of your village to suit the ambitions of a crazed ruler thousands of miles away was not a worthy sacrifice in her eyes. And her eyes were bloody good, in her oh so humble opinion. There was something in the air, or perhaps underneath her body, that made it impossible to feel angry. As much as the brunette, she maintained that her hair was brown, very dark, but brown nonetheless, she couldn't sleep on top of her lover forever. Ever so softly she moved up so that she was practically kissing his ear. I didn't know it was possible to feel this good. Hanabi confessed with a sigh. Her milky lavender eyes would be dilated if she had pupils. Mission accomplished, Naruto. I forgot about being angry. Maybe I won't have to punish you for being such a self-sacrificing, pushover of a neurotic idiot. His breathing remained even, he was still asleep. But they couldn't laze in bed all day. Today was their last day of preparation. When night fell they would leave this village, possibly forever. There was no way that Hanabi would allow the scumbags that ruled this place the chance to touch what belonged to her, and both of their plans for her lover concerned her. One especially, she wasn't ready for kids yet. She was a few months shy of 17 still, but she'd like the option one day. But she'd let him sleep a little longer. Her last year had been hell, but with the council and a psychotic Uchiha out for blood, he deserved to be content for a while. As she slipped out of the bed and made her way towards a much-needed shower, a brilliant blue eye cracked open, and a whiskered face split into a grin. The blonde had been awake again for some time and he'd been granted an opportunity to think, something that, unless it came to a fight or learning a new jutsu, he'd never really had before. A village was composed of individuals. If said village was not protecting the rights of the individual, then it in turn was not worth protecting. All those who sided with him had been entrusted with a trikanai. With the Hiraishin no Jutsu mastered, he could be back in a blink from anywhere in the elemental nations. His friends knew how to summon him, the council did not. Naruto would leave Konoha, he would keep his name, he would keep his family's possessions, and he would keep Hyuga Hanabi. He was bored through much of the day. Hanabi had left after her shower to get ready. He'd packed the night before, so spent a lot of time doing nothing. Nothing of any worth at least. Pair queens, one of his clones presented his hand in poker. They were playing with matchsticks, they'd been looked over in the ceiling frenzy of the night before. The real Naruto grinned, he always won at poker. It was probably the way of whatever metaphysical representation of luck that you subscribed to, of making up for the way his fellow humans treated him. His clones inherited none of this insane luck, and were considering creator's side, if that was a thing. Naruto flipped his 2 cards down. Royal flush spades, again. He was met with a chorus of groans. Clones 1 to 3 just threw their cards on the table. Clone 4 went to kill something, and Clone 5 dispelled in protest. Well, that's just rude. Before long they were interrupted. Hey boss, Naruto turned, it was one of his sentry clones. You got to get ready. One of Hanabi's clones swung by. She said to get your butt in gear. As it's nearly nightfall, Naruto practically grunted in response. How did she get here without being seen? The clone smirked. She used a henge, you know how good her henges are. It was true, Naruto had spent most of the time in Hanabi's squad teaching her. The other members blew him off as the demon, ignoring the fact that the single most powerful shinobi in the world had offered to train them. The end result was impressive. Hanabi was easily more powerful than most jonin in the village, but he was the only one who knew that. It dispelled, and after remembering the disparaging way in which a dog had spoken to him, Hanabi's clones could be almost as lippy as his own. Naruto sulked for a bit. His lover's clones were always mean to him. They were lucky they looked too much like her to kill. Unless it was a spar, in a spar he had no such reservations. Naruto supposed that he should follow the dog's advice. That wasn't something he ever thought he'd end up thinking to himself. In a fit of laziness, he used the Hiraishin to flash to the entry hallway, where the sum total of all his belongings sat in the form of his red sage cloak. That wasn't all he owned by any means, but Naruto was by now the most accomplished fuinjutsu master in the entire world, with all the wealth of both the Namikaze and Uzumaki's knowledge at his fingertips. The council had tried to deny his much of it, but he ignored them for the most part. The inside of the cloak was littered with over 100 storage seals, each one crammed with further sealing scrolls, in which lay everything he would need to take. An already set up tent, with bedding and chakra heater. Enough instant ramen to feed a battalion for a year. Other food for Hanabi, since she refused to admit the wonder of ramen. Her only fault he actually took exception to. Even that was a blessing in disguise. The less ramen she ate, the more for him. Thousands of jutsu scrolls and instruction books. It was only at this point that Naruto remembered that he didn't in fact know where he was going. Guess I'll have to swing by Gaara's place, they like me. Then wave, maybe Koyuki would like a visit, or Shion. After I cleared up the whole helping get a new priestess thing, she said I was still welcome to visit. Definitely shouldn't let Hanabi find out about that. It was weird enough having Sakura explain it. The blonde ex-Jinchuriki shuddered at the violence of that particular memory. In fact, now that he thought about it, most of his memories of the pink-haired medic were of unwarranted beatings. Food for thought. He was still wearing his orange jumpsuits, but that wouldn't do anymore. It was a symbol of a more innocent Naruto, a Naruto who, despite all he had been through, still believed in a virtuous Konoha. That Naruto was gone. He was still stubborn as all hell and didn't see it as giving up. More like realizing that, as a whole, the village was not worthy of him. Naruto had, for much of his life, been trying to prove himself to the people. It was about time they proved themselves to him. He'd have to use his feet for this, and it was something he never thought he'd do. He trudged up a flight of stairs to a door he had only opened once. His parents' room. Every step resonated like the tread of a giant. Silence was suddenly a deafening torrent of thunder. He pushed a simple wooden door open, half expecting the ghosts of the past to overwhelm him. But nothing happened. It was an ordinary room. "Hi mom, hi dad. Long time, no see." He smiled brightly to a large picture of his parents on the wall. He'd almost forgotten that. Wordlessly he summoned a clone, with orders to seal anything of emotional value. In this room, he always felt alone. It reminded him of the absence of his parents. Before he knew them, he had been able to shrug it off. But meeting both of them, even if they were but shades, seeing their last hours. He could still feel the embrace of his mother in his mind. Remember her last words as a living person in a chakra signature that helped him gain control of Kyuubi's chakra. Naruto turned to the wardrobe, sniggering slightly upon opening it. Most of it was taken up by the mother's stuff. His father's coats and shinobi gear relegated to a tiny fraction of the left. Uzumaki Kushina may have been a badass ninja, but she was still a woman. He wasn't interested in the codes, he had his own, which he personally thought was better. But the rest. Minutes later he was garbed in his father's raiment. Much more like a shinobi should be. He left out the flak jacket and headband. He was no longer a Konoha ninja, he would not pretend to be. Naruto spent a few moments more in the room his parents used to sleep. Running his hands over polished surfaces, fingering the drapes of their bed. Reaching into his pocket he placed explosive tags in the cardinal points of the room, 8 in total, 1 in each corner, both floor and ceiling. He followed suit for each and every room in the entire house, running his senses over to determine how much bang would be required. Normally he would be excited. Naruto loved explosions and he always remembered not to look. Cool guys don't look at explosions. It was a somber duty, however. One that required reverence. He had spent 16 years not knowing who he was. And now he was going to erase any evidence, that the council had been unable to anyway, of his parents' presence in the village hidden in the leaf. His macabre duty done, the last known Uzumaki, and the last Namikaze, donned his sage coat, and left, the toad summoning scroll and a bow staff. He'd always thought that they were badass, and they could double as a walking stick, his only visible tools. Naruto had set up 2 lines of fuinjutsu to prevent the destruction of the Namikaze estate being known before he was far enough away. First, a containment seal. It prevented any kinetic energy, be it sound or a shockwave or fire, from leaving. It would magnify the force of the explosion as it reverberated back, and he had already gone pretty overboard with the explosive tags. Then one of his own devising, an illusory containment. It absorbed the image of whatever was inside when it was set up, then created a 3D image until it ran out. With the amount of chakra Naruto had pumped into it, that would be when Anbu came a calling after he failed to show up to his public humiliation. As he walked to the gates he gathered natural energy. It was a new trick. He had gained enough control to gather it even in the middle of a fight. If he so wished, except for when he was asleep or engaged in certain activities, he had the capacity to always be in sage mode. He clicked his fingers, his enhanced nature senses detected the estate's reduction to a smoldering heap of ash. Naruto breathed out gently, drew upon his power, and for all intents and purposes, vanished. Hanabi released a sigh of relief when she reached Ichiraku Ramen undiscovered. She knew how good she was at masking her chakra. How good she was at henges, but even so, when you live with a bunch of people who all claim to have all-seeing eyes, and you were planning on becoming a missing nin, it was hard not to get nervous. She was transformed into a middle-aged blonde with green eyes, sporting a lime-green kimono. Odd, yes, but it was just an illusion after all, and it was easy for someone to pass her off as a random weirdo. It might seem like backwards logic, but anyone questioned would either remember nothing out of the ordinary or just brush it off as nothing that any interrogator needed to know. But even so, she still felt exposed. The onus was on Naruto now. He could sense her despite everything she could do. It used to unnerve her. Then it made her feel safe. No matter where she was, not matter what someone tried to do, Naruto would be able to find her. She was fairly certain that he had a seal for his Hiraishin concealed somewhere on her, in addition to his little kunai. She smiled at the thought. As a child she never thought someone other than her Nei-san would care. Certainly not that she would fall in love with someone who, as Naruto had already proven, would be willing to give their life to protect her. Hanabi most definitely never thought that whoever she found would be willing to wade through a river of blood and fire. Possibly laying waste to most of the known world at the time. She couldn't be too certain Naruto wouldn't do that if something threatened her. It made her feel good, a little worried for his sanity, yes, but good nonetheless. But as her heart opened to love and companionship, it also opened to pain. Being separated from him had wrenched her heart in two. The thought of being caught when they were so close, when after so long Naruto had decided to set out on his own, when Hanabi had finally been able to convince him to take her. A heavy hand falling on her shoulder stopped her heart for an instant, she almost screamed. But then she heard it. "Hey Firecracker-chan, you seem tense." He'd masked his voice, but Hanabi knew it was Naruto. He was the only one to refer to her as Firecracker, let alone Firecracker-chan. It was strange, Hanabi refused to call him anything but his name, and he loved it, while he came up with nicknames for her all the time. She'd never admit it, but she liked being called Firecracker. He leaned close, his warm breath tickling her ear. "How about when we get far enough away I help you with that?" Rolling her eyes, Hanabi ignored the innuendo and surveyed his disguise. A man, late 30s, brown hair and a tanned, slightly wrinkled face. Naruto had chosen to be a working man. His build and height he left at his natural 5 feet 11. It was easier to maintain without a disturbance that way. "Just order your ramen so we can go." He smiled, not a Naruto grin, so he wasn't given away, but a normal person smile. It looked strange, even though it wasn't his face, it still didn't look right. "One bowl of miso ramen please Ichiraku-san." He couldn't order too much, it would be remembered, but he wanted just a taste of his precious Ichiraku ramen before he left. Hanabi had known he would, which was why this was the designated meeting point. There was a good chance that neither of them would be coming back. She wanted them both to leave in the best way possible. Tucci served the dish with a smile. Naruto hesitated, trying to eat slowly, to savor the flavor. "Itadakimasu," he gave swift thanks, heartfelt despite the simplicity. Hanabi shuffled closer, laying her head on his shoulder in silent support, and he sipped the broth and slowly relayed the savory noodles to his eager mouth. She knew it would be hard, before Iruka, before Kakashi, before Jiraiya or Tsunade, there was the Ichiraku pair. Ayame became his Nei-san, and Tucci his surrogate father. "I'm ready when you are, love." It was the first time Hanabi hadn't called Naruto by his name, but stubborn as she was, Hanabi wasn't stupid enough to say his name in public. Without her Byakugan she couldn't be certain of the location of any Anbu, and rumors of the route's continued existence had flourished under Sasuke's reign. In a rapid jerk, Naruto tipped the bowl to his lips, downing the remaining broth. He placed a few Ryo coins on the counter, took Hanabi by the hand, and left. To the eyes of the village they would look like husband and wife, like any other 30-something couple. For a moment she could pretend that nothing was wrong. That the ruler of the most powerful hidden village in the world wasn't after her boyfriend's blood for an unknown reason. Hanabi wrapped both her arms around Naruto's right as they wandered, seemingly aimlessly, but ever closer to the main gate. Is anyone in sight? She couldn't check without her distinctive keke genke being felt, but Naruto could. No. She dropped her disguise and wrapped herself tightly against his muscled body, bringing her face to his in a kiss. When she retreated, his whiskered countenance shone back in a radiant smile. It was a real smile. Not the fake one plastered all over him for the last 19 years. Kami Hanabi loved his smile. Love was a weird thing. She knew Naruto could be a bumbling, blustering idiot at times, and his obsession with ramen drove her nuts. But sometimes the smallest little thing would make it all worthwhile. "Alright then Naruto, let's disappear." Hanabi kissed him again, feeling his chakra seep through his tongue into her, as she slowly faded from sight. It was a form of mental impression genjutsu, persuading the viewer that no one was there, but backed by Jiraiya's camouflage jutsu, making the pair all but invisible. Lastly, Naruto used his mastery of nature chakra to create a paralysis and amnesia shroud around them that was impossible for anyone but a sage to sense. Ultimately, they were invisible. Hand in hand they walked back to the main street. Few people were out, it was too late. Those that walked the streets at night didn't see them. Any that got too close seemed to freeze, then continue as if nothing was wrong. I didn't expect to feel so, it was hard for her to find the word. Melancholy? Yeah, Hanabi agreed. If it had been anyone else, they would have jeered, asking how he even knew the word, but Hanabi knew. He had never been taught well, so as a child and early teenager, hell, even at 15 Naruto was uneducated. But with a practically infinite capacity for increase and learning, Naruto rectified the situation. She remembered being on his team as a young, girl. He had thrown himself into training, into learning. He even asked her to teach him the manners of a noble. In the end neither of them could stomach it, so they left shadow clones the undesirable task. I am a little upset to be leaving. There are people I will miss. We have a right to be sad at leaving our home. But tomorrow we will be happy, we will be excited, and we are going to the capital of the Land of Fire. Hanabi snorted at his theatrics, just squeezing his hand in hers. You're an idiot? He pouted, but you're my idiot. Just know if any of Jiraiya starts popping up, I'll jukin you into next week. It was the blonde's turn to laugh. I love you. I know, someday I'll figure out why. I mean, I know I'm hot and all. She was fishing. She could tell Naruto knew it. Sometimes he'd be nice and it'd work anyway. Of all the people she knew, Naruto could understand the need for positive reinforcement. Hot isn't the right word. She damn near slapped him on the spot. Only her sixth sense for run-on sentences saved him. Naruto would have turned to face her, but she couldn't see him, and his eyes couldn't see her. Beautiful is better. Hanabi stopped, her hand pulling him to a halt as well. He'd never said that before. He'd said that he loved her, but not that she was beautiful. Elegant, smart, strong, words pale in comparison. You are my fire queen, my little flash in the darkness. My mom told me to find someone like her, in so many ways you are not. But where it counts, you would do anything for the ones you love, even let them hate you, even attack them to protect them from your father. And woe betide any man who tried to mess with you. Because after you've killed them, I'll raise them from the dead and do it all over again. An invisible hand stroked her cheek. She should have known he'd be able to sense her better than any eyesight. I love you, Hanabi, because you are you. It took a while to chip away the fate that Hiyashi put in your place. But the fireworks were worth it. You were more of a teammate to me than anyone on Team 7 ever was, after a brief, warming-up period. You listened, you knew everything about me, but instead of backing away you tried to help me. He grinned, plus you're smoking hot. Let's go faster, she announced, pulling him off to the nearby gates. Why the hurry? Because you deserve a reward for that speech. I don't think you made me forget enough. I still remembered my name. If Naruto wasn't trying to be stealthy, he'd have burst out laughing. He wanted to crack a joke about him not being the perverted one, but he really didn't want to find out the consequences of that. I keep expecting something to go wrong, Hanabi confessed. She needed to talk, if only quietly. Her heart was threatening to leap out of her ribcage and bounce around the village. I know this was my plan, but I just don't want to lose you. I'm so scared something will go wrong. It didn't. They quietly made their way out the gate and into the forest. After an hour, they began to run. After another, Naruto took down their protection. It was exhilarating. The trees flashed past so quickly they were just blurs. Powerful leaps in unison propelled them forwards, linked hand in hand. They began to laugh, clear and loud, hard and strong. They were finally free, both of the lies and the physical restraints. By midnight, they were over 100 miles away from the place that had tormented them for so long. By some wordless agreement they stopped to rest. They wouldn't be able to sleep long, especially as neither had any plan of actually sleeping anytime soon, but it would be sufficient. With a prick of the finger and a drop of blood, Naruto unsealed a scroll, then from that a ready-made campsite, tent already erected. Hanabi grinned mischievously and pulled him inside. A long time later, she lay naked in his arms. Hanabi could feel the warmth of his skin against her back. The strength of his muscles against her made her feel secure. Even out in the middle of nowhere, Naruto made her feel better than anyone ever had. Hanabi-chan? A satisfied groan was her only response. What are we, to each other? Hanabi tensed. Where was he going with this? What do you mean? She was deathly quiet, terrified, paranoia swelling within her. Had he used her for? Was that all he wanted? She forced herself to be calm. Naruto wasn't like that. He said he loved her, he never went back on his promises, and he never lied, unless it was for a prank, of course. Well, I was thinking, how we will introduce ourselves. People would think badly of you for traveling with a man unaccompanied. He trailed off. Hanabi thought she knew where this was going, and her heart went into overtime. Naruto needed a few prods. I don't care about what they think about me. I do. I don't want anyone to think badly of you. I love you too damn much for that, I was thinking. Again he couldn't say the words. Apparently more poking was required. Something had to diffuse the tension, else he'd never get to the point. If you're going to ask me to marry you, this proposal sucks, by the way. It was his turn to tense. She grinned smugly, glad he couldn't see her face. Wah, yeah. Gibberish mostly. Naruto smiled, she was right. He turned her in his arms gently, so he was looking her in the eye. Hanabi, you know that I love you, will you marry me? She wanted to make him stew, to think about how terrible this proposal was, but something inside her squealed like a little, girl and answered with a knee-jerk reaction. Hi, 1,000 times hi. Naruto held her a little tighter, her soft body molding into his. He kissed her lightly, as if to say good night. But without my family's permission, how will we? Naruto grunted, as if it didn't matter. I'm friends with 2 daimyos, a priestess and at last count 2 cages. I think we'll be fine. Good night, my little firecracker-chan, I love you. His words of comfort in her ears. Pressed closely to the man she loved, Hanabi drifted off to a contented sleep. Naruto laid awake for a few minutes longer. He had only one more mission, protect Hanabi. He just had to decide what the best way to do that was. Hyuga Hiyashi had not really been having a great day. The news of the demon's defection had run rampant through the members of the council. They dared not tell the public yet, who knew how bad the backlash would be. Hiyashi was a cautious man. When he laid a plan, he expected it to come to fruition. He would plot and chart each and every possibility, to ensure that nothing went wrong. Unfortunately, the Hokage was a brash fool, and would stick his wrench into each and every plan Hiyashi would devise, seemingly unintentionally. When the Uchiha had stuck the Uzumaki boy as a genin, Hiyashi had been overjoyed. It was a chance to keep the heiress Hanabi safe. He pulled strings, had him assigned to her genin team, et voila, she could prance about pretending to be a ninja and would never be placed in any danger. Then the Rokudame, how Hiyashi hated that the traitor boy had been granted that title, it should have been his, decided that genin wasn't humiliating enough. The Hyuga head had been forced to come up with alternate methods to protect Hanabi, namely removing her from service, citing her vulnerability as sole heir. He expected his daughter to kick up more of a fuss, but it was a surprisingly painless time, as if she was distracted. The period after that was less enjoyable. Ever since then she had become more and more difficult to control. Hiyashi had instilled in his younger daughter the values of a noble, the strength and heartlessness to rule. Regrettably, it appeared to have backfired. She would ignore more and more of his commands, even going so far as to use a high-level Jukin technique on one of her potential suitors. He needed her to get married to one of the main house, to continue his line's rule of the Hyuga, lest another of the 5 take control. And now she had vanished. When he had gone to check on her in the morning, he found her bed empty. She had been there last night, he had made certain of it, now she was gone. The guards had seen nothing. Hiyashi knew her skills and was adamant that they were nowhere near the level to sneak out of the compound. A knock at the door to his office jolted him from his thoughts. He wasn't expecting anyone, perhaps news of his heir. Who is it? Hiyashi really regretted installing the rule against using the Byakugan in the mansion itself now. It was tiring to have to seek the identity of each and every visitor. Not that he got many. An envoy of Namikaze Hanabi, seeking an audience with Hyuga Hiyashi. The white-eyed council member froze. He couldn't have heard that right, no, it was impossible. He spoke out, his voice dangerously low. Enter. They did. His second daughter stepped into the room, wearing a royal blue kimono with an orange Uzumaki swirl on the back and a smaller one stitched over the left. Hanabi, what are you playing at? His composure left him, he was livid and it showed. I've had enough of you, return to your room, take off that ridiculous garment, and prepare for retraining. Spittle flew and the table groaned under his slamming fist, but the figure that was his heir calmly stood. Unfortunately, Hyuga Dono, I am not your daughter Hanabi. My mistress is currently in the capital with her husband. She tried to continue, but was interrupted. Don't be ridiculous. Hiyashi activated his Byakugan to find it was most certainly Hanabi. Her chakra system was exactly the same. Even if you were there, you know you cannot get wed without my permission. Her visage changed, but not to the fear and submission he sought. A smirk grew uninhibited, but not the thin grimace of a victorious Hyuga. It was a most detestable grin. Apparently she spent too long near the Uzumaki brat. It appears in your rage you have forgotten many things. I am but a shadow clone, a chakra construct, and your daughter is far beyond your reach. My mistress sent me to announce her marriage to one Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto yesterday afternoon. It was conducted by the fire Daimyo himself. I bid you farewell. His daughter, no her shadow clone, dispelled in a puff of smoke. Hiyashi sat in silence. If another person were in the room, no doubt they'd be able to hear the gears whirring in his head. They'd also swear blind that smoke started billowing out his ears. He was enduring a very strange form of PTSD, his life flashed before his eyes, but the image that stuck the most was the self-satisfied smirk on his daughter's face as she dispelled. It at least answered the question of why the council's #1 problem up and left the village, in direct violation of their expectations. He himself had inspected the genjutsu when the boy reported to the council less than 4 days earlier. It had been intact, the brat had been submissive. The genjutsu had been administered by the Sharingan, a bastardized version of the Tsukuyomi and Shisui's persuasion. It could not have been broken without outside help. Now he knew who. His daughter had betrayed them all. At least he knew the location of the Kyuubi brat. He'd need to tell the council. Hours later, currently unaware of all the commotion and troubles her father and the leaders of the village were enduring, Inuzuka Hinata stood tending to her garden. She enjoyed it, it helped her find peace. She knew all that the council were up to. She knew of their plans to destroy Naruto. Her husband told her everything. She knew he tried to stand against it, she knew that he wasn't alone. But Sasuke had become a tyrant in all but name, manipulating the civilians through the Sharingan, and the shinobi through fear and a false sense of gratitude for services rendered. Hinata had known that Sasuke was lying from day one. And what was worse, she knew that her father knew it. Naruto was the only person she had ever found that could lie to the Byakugan and get away with it. For some reason her father had it in for Naruto, and she wanted to know why. It surely wasn't the Kyuubi still. Oh Naruto-kun, why do they hate you so much? She wasn't in love with him any longer. He had set her free 3 years earlier, but he still occupied a soft spot in her heart. When Kiba revealed the council's plans, the depths of their betrayal, she had wept bitter tears. She still idolized Naruto, he was still the epitome of all she wanted to achieve. He was the one who had turned Kiba from a brash, arrogant idiot, to the man that she could love. Kiba had been changed in the aftermath of the Great War. He had seen a mother and sister die. Hinata had lost her cousin Neji in that same conflict. He had seen the depths of human depravity and their willingness to betray their own for power. It had changed him, in some ways softening him. In other ways he made Diamond look like a sodden rag. He was forced to become a leader, for his clan and for her. She had convinced her father to agree to her marriage to Kiba by subtly persuading him it was a way to get her out of the way. He had attempted to have her Byakugan sealed, but Kiba refused. He then attempted to have her sealed by force. Kiba had broken the arms and legs of the 3 Hyuga sealing elders. Even now there were 4 of Kiba's most trusted clansmen watching her. It was a nervous life, but at least she was beyond her father's grasp here. Her greatest pain was for her sister. Hanabi had changed since being on a team with Naruto, he had that effect. She no longer let Hiyashi rule her, and because of that Hinata worried for her safety. Ka-san, where's Oto-san? Hinata's daughter Haruka, not yet 2 years old, toddled over, shadowed by her 4 guards and her nursemaid. She was her other ray of sunshine, and a stone in her father's shoe. She had been born with both the red markings of the Inuzuka and the Byakugan, and she was a prodigy. Even at her age she could use chakra, not very well, and not in a controlled fashion, but it was something that the Hyuga main house would very much like to control. Hinata scooped her daughter into her arms, hugging her tightly and swinging her in the way she liked, enticing a high giggle from Haruka. He's at a meeting, Ruka-chan. Daddy will be back soon. Unexpectedly Haruka wriggled out of her mother's arms and ran to something only she could see. Daddy. As Kiba stepped through the door he was tackled by a ball of red and blue known as Inuzuka Haruka. He picked her up and kissed her on the cheek as she wrapped her little arms around his neck. Ka-san said you were in a meeting. Was it fun? He laughed. Being a father had also changed him. No, Ruka-chan, well not at first, but there was something I need to speak to your Ka-san about. Do you think that you could go play inside for a minute? You aren't going to make kissy face? He shook his head. She narrowed her lavender eyes. Promise? I promise, now scoot midget. Haruka ran off giggling. She had such energy and a boundless confidence. Kiba shook his head slowly, as his brushing cobwebs from his brain. He turned to his wife, holding her gently and kissing her cheek as a brief, "I saw that," was yelled from their house. "I have news. You'll be surprised. Not sure if that's good or bad yet. You should probably sit down. Kiba-kun, I haven't fainted in over 2 years, I think I'll be fine." "Right, I'm not sure where to start really." Kiba massaged his forehead. He was 19 and already felt like an old man. It wasn't in the get to relax and do nothing way either. "Kiba, you'll have to hurry, Haruka won't wait forever, and if she decides to activate her Byakugan, you know she can read lips already." Oh yeah, sometimes it was frightening how smart that girl was. If it weren't for the Inuzuka marks he'd doubt she was his. "It's about Naruto, he's gone." "What do you mean, gone?" Her voice was low, dangerous. Kiba was a powerful ninja, but after getting over her confidence issues, Hinata was probably one of the most lethal kunoichi in the village. She had never hit him, but just knowing that if she did, well, it was best not to think about it. As in, he left sometime after the council ordered him to report for sterilization. But that isn't all. He took everything. Kiba tried to stay serious, but couldn't. He took his father's entire jutsu library, everything from the Namikaze estates. He somehow got into the Hokage's vault and stole everything to do with the Uzumaki or his father, including the Forbidden Scroll. Not sure how you can steal something that belonged to you, but Sasuke Teme was never exactly reasonable, or your father for that matter. He started going off topic. Hinata smiled lovingly and decided to remind her husband of what exactly they were discussing. "Kiba, back to Naruto." "Oh, yeah, after that the Dobi," a glare warned him, "I mean Naruto, yeah, just Naruto." After that a snort of mirth burst from his lips. "He destroyed the Namikaze estate. The whole thing, there isn't even rubble. The best part is he blew it up over 48 hours ago. He used Fuinjutsu to cover it up. The council didn't know a thing until Anbu tried to drag him in this morning. It took over 10 squads 3 hours to get to the house. Naruto had the whole thing sealed down tighter than a... Damn it, he couldn't think of anything. Keep going, Kiba-kun, I won't mock you much." Sometimes her new confidence was a double-edged sword as every day Hinata pushed at the boundaries of what she dared to do. "Yeah, whatever. Anyways, they finally got to the estate to find a smoking crater. He must have used over 100 explosive tags, or some sort of enormous Kaiden technique, but no one sensed a thing. I think Sasuke Teme has seriously underestimated Naruto. If he holds a grudge, with the caliber of people Naruto is friends with, he might not be Hokage for much longer, Sharingan or not." He took a breath, taking his wife's hand in his and leading her to the viewing bench, sitting her down tenderly but firmly. "Kiba, what's wrong? That's great news. What else happened?" "Wait a moment, Kiba-kun." With a resigned sigh, Hinata twisted her head, veins pulsing next to her eyes. "Haruka, you turn that Byakugan off right now." More giggles carried on the air from the house. Hinata rolled her eyes. "Well, she doesn't get that from me. Now, are you going to tell me the real reason you've been shuffling nervously since you came in? My father may view me as a failure, but I can still read a person better than most." He was really unsure now, not certain of what to do or say. "Yeah, one moment." Kiba turned to his wife's guards. "Could you go join the detail on our daughter? This is technically top secret. You know how much those stuff balls like their red tape." They left immediately. Kiba was as well respected as his mother had been and the Alpha's word was law. Hinata was getting worried now. "Kiba," she dropped the honorific, "tell me what is going on." "I will not ask again. It's to do with Naruto's location." One of Hinata's dark eyebrows slowly rose, and she rotated one of her hands in front of her, motioning for her husband to continue. It turns out Naruto didn't leave alone. Initially Hiashi claimed that he kidnapped someone and forced them to leave with him, but Sasuke, actually being useful for once, revealed information that contradicted that, saying that said individual left willingly and of their own accord. "I'm still not sure about how to say this." Kiba's eyebrows drew together and he exhaled deeply. Earlier today a certain member of the council received a visitor, claiming to be the envoy of the wife of Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto. Hinata screwed her forehead in confusion, her fingers tapping together as they hadn't in years. Naruto was married? But to whom, and how did no one notice? That's where it gets really interesting. The council member in question was your father. The envoy was a shadow clone of your sister. Cogs started turning in Hinata's head. She thought she knew where this was going. Naruto went to the capital. Hanabi went with him. According to the Hokage, their relationship was why he separated them a year ago and confined Naruto to the estates. Your father was furious that he kept it to himself, and even angrier that he was exposed for lying in a council session. The shadow clone introduced itself as an envoy of Namikaze Hanabi. They were married by the fire daimyo yesterday. He winced and waited for it. Hinata's eyes went wide. Her sister and Naruto, together. Her Imouto and Naruto-kun were married. Images that she would rather not have thought about where Hanabi was concerned flashed through her head. She fainted. One day earlier, the capital city of Hai no Kuni. Ta-da, this Hanabi-chan is the capital. Naruto's fiancée just rolled her eyes and hmphed. He had been very dramatic about everything since they woke up in each other's arms in that tent the day before. It had been that day when she asked him something that had been bugging her. Hanabi had suspected that the reason they were traveling by foot had some significance, that it was to avoid the detection of his chakra signature too early. Imagine her surprise when it turned out the reason was far more mundane. The real reason: Naruto hadn't left any of his trikanai in any of the other villages. They were left with walking. If running at 50 miles per hour through the treetops could be called walking. Hi Naruto, I know, I've been here before. Hanabi was garbed in her traveling gear. Naruto was very flattered by it. A heavy cloak, in the style of the one he and the other Sasuke hunters wore, but a dark blue, somewhere between royal and navy. The red stripes along the bottom replaced with orange, and an orange Uzumaki swirl adorning the back. Underneath she wore a simple dark form-fitting t-shirt and ninja trousers, covered with a ninja mesh miniskirt and shirt for additional protection of vital areas. Naruto wore his sage outfit, was in sage mode up until a mile from the city. She'd convinced him to put the staff away thankfully. He had almost permanently been in sage mode since they left, except for when they slept or made love. It was necessary to check for pursuit. He could sense all developed chakra signatures, suppressed or otherwise, for 100 miles in all directions. If he had been exposed to them before, he would be able to identify them. They had not been pursued so far. Peeved, whatever, we are here to do some very important and dangerous business. He paused for dramatic effect. She didn't fall for it. It wasn't the first time. She was pleasantly surprised by the reason for their visit. Sightseeing. Like a small child, Hanabi's widened, and her hands made tiny clapping motions in front of her. Really? He smiled at her innocent glee. He had figured it would be like that. Yeah, I thought that you'd never have gotten to just sightsee, what with your father having to pipe up his rectum and all. So I thought we'd have a look around here for a few days. Then we can decide where we want to go to get married, Spring Country or Sanagakure. Like a pair of lovers, which they were, they entered the city. Hanabi clung to his arm, her head resting on his shoulder. For a few blissful moments they navigated the city streets aimlessly, having no true destination, simply wanting to enjoy the sights. And what sights there were! When they had crested the hill, the magnificence of the city had taken their breath away. It was easily 10 times the size of Konoha. There were even rumors of it having almost 1 million inhabitants. Every building seemed impressive, constructed with shimmering white walls and topped with baked red shingle, some low and sprawling, others tall and imposing. They separated to let a palace official past, but to their surprise he stopped in front of them. Hanabi quickly took Naruto's arm once more as the pair surveyed the man. Long dark hair billowed down his back, to just below his shoulder blades, in a style reminiscent of Hanabi's deceased cousin Neji. He wore a shimmering, canary yellow kimono, and clutched what looked like an order packet in his hand. Naruto-sama, I am glad to have found you. The sage was immediately on guard, unconsciously gathering nature chakra just in case. When the gate guards told me you had arrived at last, I was so pleased. The man was so upbeat and happy that all thought of hostility melted away. Both were impeccable judges of character, and his kind of cheer just couldn't be faked. Arrived, at last, what do you mean? I only knew I was coming here the other day. Hi, how is it you knew to expect us? Hanabi chipped in. The fire daimyo has been expecting your arrival for nearly 3 years now. After he discovered how the village of Konoha had treated the hero of the elemental nations, he set in motion plans for your inevitable departure from that nest of vipers. Hero of the elemental nations. Apparently it was only in Konoha that the title belonged to Sasuke. No wonder they kept him confined to the village. It appeared that Naruto possessed more allies than he thought. His lordship has a standing order that you are to be escorted into his presence immediately upon arrival. He is eager to repay you for services rendered, and his ire is raised with the village that scorned you. He will leave it upon you to pass judgment however. The man turned to leave, and then turned back. Oh, pardon me, my name is Fukusaku Kenta, his lordship's vizier and chief advisor. And I am a massive fan Naruto-sama. Ever since you saved Koyuki-sama, she and I were personal friends when she was still masquerading as Fujikaze Yukie. With that he left. It was apparent that they were to follow. Naruto looked to Hanabi, which surprised her. He stroked her cheek with a thumb and kissed her gently, using it as a cover-up for the words he whispered. I sense no deception, are you for this? Hanabi didn't think the kiss was good enough, so she forcefully pushed her lips to his, moving sweetly against him before sucking on his lower lip and dragging her teeth seductively across it. Hi Naruto, I think we should see what his motives are. We need shelter. We need someone powerful enough to give the council pause, unless you've changed your mind about a hostile takeover. He couldn't hold back a laugh. They moved off once more, Hanabi retaking her place on Naruto's arm, the left this time. The blonde leaned in close. If only they knew that I'm the one holding you back from destroying them, I think they'd give me a medal. Troublesome little firecracker-chan. Before she could hit him or move away, Naruto's arm snaked around her waist and pulled Hanabi closer. If it looks like things are going downhill, get out of there. She started to argue, but he pulled her head into his shoulder, whispering in her ear. We both know they can't hurt me if I go all out. Hurting you is the only way someone can get to me now. Nearly everyone else I care about is dead and Kiba is looking after the others. If Sasuke gets over his arrogance and his superiority complex, he'll realize that and come after you. Hanabi turned her head, laying her ear to be able to hear his heart, powerful, fast. She could almost believe he was invincible, almost. Fine, but if you get yourself killed I'm coming after you. I'm not willing to face this world without you. Just the faintest ghost of a voice was all Hanabi could muster, but it was enough. I promise, I won't die until you do. A comfortable silence fell over the couple. Both had a feeling that their brief interlude as a normal pair was over. It only remained to be seen what exactly would fill the gap. The palace was enormous. Wide sweeping roofs and tall marble columns topped with jade, and that was just the outside gate. The grounds alone could probably fit a third of Konohagakure. The gates themselves were steel all the way through, embossed with a mixture of brass and gold for decoration. It was an ornament, a show of wealth. The guards weren't. Hanabi released her Byakugan and Naruto swept his sage senses over the security. Both those they could see and the 12 high-level shinobi they couldn't. One of the chakra signatures seemed similar to Naruto, but not overly so. Every guard had a developed chakra system, indicative of at least basic shinobi training, and the 12 shadows were all Jonin level or higher. One was formidable enough that Naruto might have needed to try. Not nearly powerful enough to warrant Sage Mode or Kurama's chakra, but impressive nonetheless. Clearly in the aftermath of the war the Daimyo had fully reformed the Guardian 12, and upped his independent security. The cause was easy to deduce, he no longer trusted the Hokage. Hanabi was nearly blinded by a golden light as Naruto activated Sage Mode. It appeared he was going for the impressive entrance. She released his arm as the mighty gates swung open, revealing the palace proper. Hanabi called upon her noble training, her poise carefully calculated, her expression revealing nothing to any roundabout her. Naruto had no need for such things. The air surrounding him was so thick with chakra that his presence was almost corporeal. His coat billowed around him in a wind that wasn't there. As he walked the dust rose and hovered around his ankles, plants leaned in closer and trees seemed to bow. The natural world acknowledged him as one who had mastered its secrets. Even the great toad sages of Myoboku Mountain had nothing left to teach him. Naruto walked as if he had every right to be there, the orange markings striking to the eye, giving him a look that wasn't quite distinguished, it was far greater. Hanabi relaxed her chakra. Next to the colossus at her side she was no more fear-inducing than a kitten, but she didn't need to be. Her place would be different, she would be his link to the nobles. Naruto was a force of nature. Though young he commanded the power of a 300-year-old demon. though the being itself was absent, as well as the nigh incomprehensible might of natural chakra, which in a lesser being would be fatal. Hanabi suspected he could combine the two, and her calculations had divulged interesting results. Their yellow-clad guide paused before a set of doors, turning to the pair. "May I ask the name of your companion Naruto-sama? I must announce you both to my lordship." Hanabi answered for herself, swiftly imposing in the man's mind that she was no simpering noble girl, she was a kunoichi, and as such equal in the eyes of the law to any man. Hyuga Hanabi, ex-genin of Konoha, betrothed to Namikaze Naruto. A smile, so large many would think it had to be false, met the response along with a slight bow. He waved them in. As Naruto stepped over the threshold, he was taken aback by just how many courtiers there were, at least 100 milling around the enormous hall. Twin balconies overshadowed the room on his left and right, shinobi hiding in the darkness, good ones. A fanfare, simple as befitting their status, rang out, along with a booming voice. Introducing Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto, Toad Sage of Myoboku Mountain and hero of the elemental nations, along with his fiancée Hyuga Hanabi, for an audience with the Daimyo. The sea of shimmering colors parted as Naruto and Hanabi entered side by side. Iridescent kimonos and resplendent outfits assaulted the eyes in every direction. Neither was sure whether it was attractive or garish. Each may have been splendid, but with so many different colors, it was somewhat of an eyesore. Whispers rose like tendrils of mist. The appearance of two shinobi in battle dress in the room itself, not hiding away in the galleries, was a rare thing. The absence of Hite 8 caused titters and pointed fingers. There were a number of people who were not so impressed, the ambassadors from Konoha to the Daimyo, including one in particular. Hanabi smirked inwardly at the fuming Hyuga representative as she continued to the raised dais upon which the Daimyo's throne was situated. He would have to be dealt with, but later. A silent pact was made between her lover and her, she would speak. Until they were in private, Naruto would remain silent. Large groups of politicians made him jumpy, the side effect of growing up in the fashion he did. Neither knelt, nor did they bow, simply inclining their neck as a show of respect. Surprise rippled through the hall, gasps of outrage at the defiance of protocol. The daimyo himself merely smiled. "Welcome Namikaze-san, Hyuga-san. I assume you would wish for a private audience." His voice was ever so slightly effeminate, his mannerisms childish, but his eyes betrayed an inner strength that would be foolish to underestimate. They went according to the plan, Hanabi answered, but it seemed they would get their wish for a more secluded location for the conversation. "Hi Daimyo-sama, Fukusaku-san delivered a message from you requesting my companion's presence to discuss some delicate matters." "That is indeed the case, Hyuga-san. I see that Namikaze-san has found himself a spokesperson. I trust our conversation will be even more interesting than I had previously anticipated. Come, let us go." But before they made it out of the awestruck hall, the Hyuga representative made his move. "I must protest Daimyo-sama. This girl is not at liberty to discuss anything, and she is most certainly not betrothed to this piece of scum. I demand." With a twitch of the finger, he was silenced. "You demand? You presume to make demands of me in my own palace? It appears that I do young Hanabi-san a disservice by associating her with your clan." In a rage the man leapt at Hanabi, his fingers poised in a familiar attack. A smug grin appeared as he saw that Hanabi made no attempt to escape. His progress was halted by Naruto's fist in his gut. Blood burst from his lips and he choked, barely able to draw a breath. Fast, didn't see him move, even the Hyuga didn't see him. Whispers again took hold in the hall, even the shinobi, only a bare handful had seen him move, and all knew that none of them would be able to react fast enough to stop him if they were Naruto's target. Taking him by the throat, Naruto growled in a low voice, barely restrained fury in his eyes, compounded with his bar pupils. Immense chakra signature and orange sage markings. The Hyuga was terrified out of his mind. Naruto didn't even flare any of his red chakra. "Tell the Hokage this, if anyone tries to hurt Hanabi, I will assume it was Konoha, and I will raze it to the ground, consequences be damned." He cast him to the floor with a nonchalant flick of the wrist. The Hyuga whimpered, curling up into a ball, still unable to draw more than the faintest hit of a breath. Naruto glanced at Hanabi, she wasn't shaken at all. Her outside countenance was the epitome of calm. Inside she was actively smiling. You knew he would do that? Naruto already knew the answer, but he needed the room to know. Yes. You could have stopped him at any time? Yes, he was very slow. But I think the good people needed a demonstration of at least the tiniest part of your power, in case Konoha got any ideas. I knew you'd get him. He hugged her, just a brief show of affection, and an excuse to get close. He tried to get me to marry him, even tried to rape me once. Everything fell off Naruto's face, an emotionless mask that Hanabi knew to be unbridled rage. Naruto, calm down, he needs to deliver the message, remember. He let her go and they continued their journey to the private chamber. Hanabi-chan, I'm done with them. Since birth that place has screwed me over. I always had a reason to stay, first Oji-san, then the Akatsuki, these last 3 years it was you. I'm done letting them walk over me. Once he lets Sasuke Teme know the score, if I ever see him again, I'll kill him. 10 minutes later, in the palace of the Lord of the Land of Fire, in a small chamber just beyond the audience hall, Namikaze Naruto and Hyuga Hanabi sat opposite the daimyo himself. Neither party spoke, they were measuring each other. The instant they were alone, the feudal lord dropped his simpering politician act. His face grew stern and his mannerisms solid. The message was clear, there was to be no pretense here. All masks were to be dropped, all lies and untruths left at the door. Naruto broke the impasse, he released the nature chakra, returning to normal. He had finally been satisfied that there was no way for someone outside the room to hear them. So, imagine my surprise when I come here to find that you were expecting me. When just a few days ago I didn't even know I would be coming. Out there I made to defer to you, but you want no lies, right? The daimyo nodded. Okay, I am the most powerful person on the planet. That is fact. I am the last Jinchuriki that there ever will be. I am the last student of the Sandaime. The last student of Jiraiya. I have mastered nature chakra. I have mastered every jutsu my father ever created and improved most of them. I have mastered the Kyuubi's chakra to such an extent that none could possibly stand before me. So I have every right to make demands of whoever I choose whenever I choose. Are we clear? He could see out of his eye Hanabi's face crease with amusement. What he did not expect was the Fire Daimyo's agreement. True. Naruto, before you continue, may I interject? You may. Naruto was almost glad to be interrupted. He wasn't 100% sure where he was going with that. It sounded cool and all, but his follow-up wasn't solid yet. Your treatment in Konoha is unique to that place. The rest of Fire Country, the rest of the world, worships your name. Well, except the nobles, but they wouldn't know the pointy end of a kunai from the rain. My grandfather was there when Konoha was established. He gave it his blessing. He was a personal friend of the Shoden. He told me so many stories. He told me of his valor, his honor. He told me of his love for all his people and his hatred of bloodshed. The man my grandfather knew would have and did give his life for this country, not just the village, but the entire country. Your father knew that. Minato, he didn't speak of it to others, and neither did I, but we corresponded regularly. Naruto, you are like him in many ways, but like your mother too. And then in other ways you're your own person completely. I'm getting sidetracked. I have 100 years of news and concerns to fit into a few hours. Give me a moment. I need to think of how to tackle this. Whatever Naruto had been expecting, it wasn't this. He wasn't expecting to be addressed not only as an equal, but as a familiar face. A small hand found its way into his. Delicate fingers caressed his thumb with tender grace. Hanabi smiled softly, and Naruto couldn't help but grin. He had been alone for so long, friends had been great, but for so long the companionship of a lover had been denied him, that her presence, her attempts to comfort him, just felt so incredible he couldn't help it. An amused cough ruined the moment. They looked at the daimyo. You know, each day I wish that I had the opportunity to marry for love. This world does terrible things to its young people in the name of honor and tradition. Partly it's my fault. Just fight for what's important. I didn't for so long, and the world was plunged into another war. I think I'm ready now. Konoha had gone astray. It has forgotten what it was founded for. True, it was a union of warring clans, but it was more than that. It was to show that shinobi are not tools for mindless bloodshed. Senju Hashirama wanted to protect the innocent, so did your father. Sarutobi Hiruzen, though a good man, was too weak to do what needed to be done. I know you loved the man, but it is true. In his reign Konoha changed. They still lauded themselves as the most humane of the villages, but that was no longer the case. They stood witness to the enslavement of the majority of the Hyuga clan, with torture and murder hidden under the guise of protection and clan business. They stood by and did nothing when their greatest allies, your mother's people, were slaughtered. Sarutobi did nothing to stop Danzo, he did nothing to stop Orochimaru. Konoha grew fat, but it was not the fat of peace, it was the fat of murderers, slavers, bigots and conquerors. Danzo manipulated me and many others through the Sharingan. He damn near took over the world through the Cage Summit with that cursed eye. There was guilt in the man's voice. It was clear that the daimyo blamed himself for the evil propagated underneath his reign. I should have been stronger, I should have known somehow. Konoha has forgotten that it is a part of Fire Country, it has forgotten that the Hokage must answer to me. I can no longer trust them. And I have not even touched the gravest of crimes. Jinchuriki were mistreated all over the world, but Hiruzen did nothing. No Naruto, you need to hear this. You ask for simple, you ask for truth and honesty. He kowtowed to the council time and time again, while you were neglected, beaten and worse. He did nothing, I did nothing. I would plead ignorance, but that is no excuse. I should have kept a better eye on Konoha. I should never have allowed it to lose its way. Daimyo Dono? If I may, you cannot blame yourself now. It is done, the past has happened, crying, weeping and wailing will do nothing to change it. Now we must look to the future. There will be no more Jinchuriki, I have made sure of that. My children may receive a portion of the Kyuubi's chakra, but they may not. If you have anything more to add, please do. I have things to explain and would rather not be interrupted. At some point during the feudal lord's speech about the leaf's sins, Hanabi burrowed into Naruto's side, snuggling as if they were alone on a couch, not in a meeting with the ruler of a country. She had nothing to say, not yet. The softness returned to the daimyo's eyes, but he soldiered on. Naruto, we need your help. The Hokage has taken too many liberties of late, all the cages have. They need to remember that the will of fire does not solely belong to them, and neither does the right to live in peace. Millions of my people were displaced from their homes due to that war. Hundreds of thousands died, all because of the greed of one man, one Konoha shinobi. True, it was all Madara's machinations, and he was a traitor and a murderer from the beginning, but that is the way the village is going now. That is the mindset of Uchiha Sasuke, who for some unfathomable reason was named Hokage, despite my vote for you, I might add. You voted for me? Of course, my agents have had their eyes on you for quite some time. With your stubborn personality, your sense of virtue, and the power to back it up, you would have been a magnificent leader of the shinobi of this country. When you were not, instead of wondering why and demanding to know why my wishes were ignored, I waited. I thought that you would not stand that insult, that you would leave the village. So I set my men to watch for you, and waited. But the damage to you was greater than I feared, they nearly broke you, it appears, and I waited 3 years in vain. Yet now you are here, and I have a feeling it has much to do with the young woman beside you. I have a plan for you, Naruto, one that requires your dedication, not just in time, but in belief. If you do not fully want to go through it, I must take other measures, do not feel pressured. But first, I wish to know what happened. This was not what Naruto expected to be doing today, to think he just wanted to spend the day sightseeing with Hanabi. After the war, many of the cages had fallen, the Raikage and Tsunade both fatally wounded. I took Obito and Madara and teleported far away from the battlefield. We fought for days, I with the power of Kyuubi, and with Madara pulling Sharingan Jutsu after Sharingan Jutsu out of his ass. I was losing. I couldn't help think of the thousands who had died, to buy me time. And I was failing them. I was desperate. At Kurama's suggestion, I drew Nature Chakra. Nature Chakra needs to balance with the chakra in your body in quantity if not strength. With Kurama's strength, I could draw enough to quadruple even his strength. The power was incredible. I tore them into pieces. Obito died, but Madara just kept coming back, over and over again. His bastardized Edo Tensei was too powerful. Then Kurama spoke. He told me that he and the rest of the Biju were willing to give their lives to counter this threat. He taught me a jutsu. His father, the Raikudo Sennin, taught it to him. At the memory, tears welled in his eyes. Do you know why the Biju acted the way they did? We did it to them, humans. We hunted them, trapped them in vessels time and time again. We drove Shukaku insane. All they wanted was to fulfill the mission their father gave them. They just wanted to live. And now, their sacrifice is forgotten. 9 immortal beings gave their lives to stop Madara. He was shouting now, they never had to die. It wasn't their enemy to face, it was ours. None of them had to die. I did it. I had no choice. He was fully crying now, Hanabi tightly hugging him, weeping alongside him. She whispered constantly in his ear, how she loved him, how none of it was his fault. It helped. Naruto had held that inside for 3 years, the full knowledge of what he had been a part of. The full knowledge and emotions of the Biju as they were driven to anger and madness belonged to him now. I miss him, you know? Kurama, I miss him. He was with me the whole way, a crazy psychotic baka fox, but he was there. He loved his brothers and sisters so much, that their pain consumed him. He became an incarnation of anger and hate, so much that he forgot why. He just wanted to protect his family. I sealed Madara away with the force of 9 immortal souls, he's never coming back. Then I was stabbed in the back, literally. Sasuke appeared out of nowhere, I was too tired to sense him, he ran me through. Thinking I was dead took me back and made up a crock of lies. He claimed that the Sandaime and Danzo left him with a mission to smooth over his missing nin status. They took him back with fucking open arms. He told them he killed Madara, he fucking lied, and they all believed him. All my friends, all the people I damn near died to protect. All the people I saved from pain. They threw me away like ash on the wind. I was the demon brat again. My teammates abandoned me. Only the Nara and Inuzuka stood by me. Well, Hanabi too. I'm sure your agents know the score after that. I met Hanabi, fell in love with one of my best friend's sister, and left that place after they decided to neuter and neutralize me. Well, she twisted my arm. That everything you want to know? Hi, Naruto. Thank you. I never understood how tough the battle was, or how it would feel that the Uchiha tried to kill you, as I understood it was your word against his. This definitely confirms my thinking. However, I believe I have kept you for long enough in one sitting. This has been a heavy conversation, we can discuss it later. Is there anything I can do in the meantime? Naruto stroked Hanabi's hair in response. I have an idea. I can't believe it. We're actually married. Hanabi hadn't been able to say much else since the Daimyo had agreed to wed them earlier. The paperwork was organized in less than an hour. Shortly after, with 100 nobles and a fuming citizen council representative from Konoha as witnesses, they were married. She kept looking at the golden band adorning her left ring finger. It was simple gold. It occupied her finger next to her engagement ring. The morning after his hashed proposal, Naruto had surprised her with it, a large diamond, flanked by 2 rubies cut into the Uzumaki swirl. It had been his mother's, another keepsake he had saved. The daimyo had then made available a suite for them as long as they chose to stay at the palace. It was their current location. Hanabi just stood in the bathroom in a thin and short nightgown, gazing at the ring. She was still in her golem mode when a pair of strong arms swept her from her feet, carrying her bridal style to the bed. Naruto laid her down in the center of the giant mattress. He knelt before her, slowly lowering himself until the only thing keeping his weight off his wife were his elbows. Shush, Hanabi-chan. Wonder later, right now you're mine. She leaned up the last bit, pulling her husband fully on top of her while kissing him intensely. The baka sometimes had excellent points, and she planned on enjoying her honeymoon. The main gates of Konohagakure were a familiar sight to many. For so long the eternal Chunin Izumo and Katetsu had acted as a token visible barrier, but they were gone now, just another pair of casualties in the war that had inflamed the whole world. Another pair of nameless Chunin had taken their place for 3 years, but they too were gone, except no one knew where or why. In the days since the defection of Namikaze Naruto, the gate guards had vanished. Rumor abounded, many pointing fingers at the Hokage, wondering if he was taking up Orochimaru's example when it came to those who failed in their mission. Unrest and distrust filled every heart, the elite wondering how long until the masses arose. Those same proletariat masses wondering how long until they disappeared, at the behest of the Uchiha Hokage. A carriage came screaming up to the gates, screeching to a halt as a squad of Anbu dropped out of nowhere to surround it. The same Hyuga ambassador who had been publicly shamed in the daimyo's court limped out to confront them, accompanied by his fellow Konoha representative. We must see the Hokage now. He must convene an emergency council meeting. We have urgent news. I bear a message from the demon. Another figure, an Anbu captain, joined the group. Very well, leave your transport here. Bat will take your message to the Hokage. We shall see if he will receive you. He would. And the rest of the council was only too happy to drop everything, well except Kiba and Shikamaru, who were still sleeping with their respective wives, Hinata and Tamari. What a drag. The lethargic Nara was currently lamenting his awake situation. In the fallout of the wake of war he had drifted out of favor, going from a valued strategist and sub-commander in the United Shinobi Army, to being nearly ignored on everything. Logic was no longer welcome in Konoha. It had been his idea for Konoha to remain part of the coalition. Sasuke had refused. Now the village hidden in the leaf stood alone in a world of friendships and alliances. This Naruto fetish of yours is growing tiresome, Sasuke. When are you going to grow up like the rest of us had to? How dare you address Hokage-sama in such a manner? He is a great leader and… Oh, shut up. Kiba snarled, you civilians shouldn't even be here. You aren't shinobi and you certainly don't represent the people of this village. The only thing you care about is yourself. All of you be silent. Sasuke had entered. Nara, I'm afraid if you speak to me like that again I'll be forced to. You'll what, Sasuke? Kill me? Then either Tamari will kill you or you'll kill Tamari. In which case Suna will declare war, and her allies, which make up most of the elemental nations, will descend upon you and annihilate this entire village. I assure you, Sasuke, for all your posturing you cannot touch me. Your arrogance damned you a long time ago, but now it's going to damn this entire place. It wasn't a new thing. Shikamaru would insult Sasuke. One of the civilians would have apoplexy. Then Sasuke would threaten the lazy Nara. Then Shikamaru would remind Sasuke just how many powerful allies he had. But despite the show, Shikamaru had no say over what happened in Konoha. He could complain all he liked. Sasuke ran roughshod over everyone's opinions but his own. And after the deaths of nearly all capable clan leaders, including Ino and Choji, murdered on their honeymoon, the only opposition he had was Kiba and Shikamaru. Sasuke's eyes flashed red. Not for long will I condone this, Nara. Soon I will have no need of the rest of the elemental nations, and we shall take our place as rulers of this world. Then I shall have no need of you. This was new. Many had suspected for some time that the insane Uchiha had sinister plans, but this was the first time it was confirmed. I see. Well, can we get a move on? It's my day off. I'd rather not be here longer than necessary. Wearing the ceremonial Hokage robes, Sasuke took his seat. The meeting began. We are here to discuss what to do with the missing nin Naruto, of no family name of import. Shikamaru rolled his eyes. It was going to be a troublesome meeting, and he had to object already. Since he was stricken from the military records, Namikaze Naruto is not a missing nin. We have no legal right to name him as such. And furthermore, as he was not a shinobi of this village, he was under no obligation to obey any orders this council made as long as he did not disturb the peace, which he did not. The Rokudame ground his teeth in frustration. Every time he spoke he was opposed. His problems just piled up and up and up. Be that as it may, he is in possession of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, the property of this village. He has stolen many of our most precious secrets and jutsu. We have news, the report of the ambassadors to the Daimyo who returned today. We will hear them. His Anbu opened the door to the chamber, and a Hyuga entered, followed furtively by the civilian representative. The masked ninja leapt back into the shadows of the rafters. My name is Hyuga Hiroki. A week ago I was in the Daimyo's court during an audience session when an unexpected announcement was made. It proclaimed the arrival of Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto, and his fiancée Hyuga Hanabi. He paused for effect, expecting gasps. Hiroki was disappointed. We are already aware of that particular news. Their marriage is of no surprise to us. It was Hiyashi who spoke, speaking as the head of the Hyuga clan. She has already been removed from the records of the clan. We are working on obtaining another heir. He glanced at Kiba surreptitiously. Kiba noticed, and started making plans. Konoha was no longer safe for his wife and child. He would need to contact Naruto. Yes, while it is not the only thing that occurred. They were welcomed by the Daimyo, personally, as if they were expected. Eyebrows were raised subtly above disbelieving eyes. I attempted to obtain an audience with the girl alone, but was publicly rebuffed. A public insult was levied by the daimyo against our clan. As was my right, I attempted to apply the seal to her, but was assaulted by the demon boy. At this the civilian snorted, drawing glares before he spoke, his previous nervousness all but vanished. You attacked her, she wasn't scared at all. Stop trying to cast yourself in rosy light. While you were unconscious, she admitted to being able to stop you at any time. She merely wanted to showcase Naruto's power to me, and vicariously to you, honorable council members. Sasuke decided it was his turn to speak up. It appears, Hiashi, that your second daughter is far more capable than you thought. She is not only a master of shadow clones but battlefield tactics and strategy, and a master politician in the making. Yet, you let her slip from your fingers. I question your eligibility as clan head. Many sniggered at the slight. None liked Hiashi enough to stand on his side. He stayed silent, his failings had hit him hard, he had lost not one but two heiresses. He had no arguments, he had failed and was man enough to admit it. Finally he spoke, realizing that the Hokage expected a response. As do I, Hokage-sama. I fear I may have lost the right to rule. Once a suitable heir is located, I will stand down. If drinks had been allowed in council meetings, post-Tsunade, it was decided that their presence was unwise. There would have been a universal spitting out of said beverages. That was not the anticipated response. Where was his air of superiority, where was his arrogance? He was a different man to the Hiashi of 2 minutes previously, really. Shikamaru wasn't buying it. See that you do. The attention of the room was returned to the one giving witness. What more do you have for us that will be useful for bringing Naruto back so we may extract the Kyuubi? If one was paying attention, they would swear there was lust in his eyes. They would say the death of Itachi had done nothing to dampen his insatiable appetite for power and he was dangerously close to insanity. I know that he made no attempt to use the Kyuubi's chakra. Instead, his body glowed with some strange power. The Hyuga piped up once more. The black-haired Uchiha's fingers formed into a steeple. He knew what that was. Madara had clued him into the sage mode while he was drafted into Akatsuki. I know nothing more. I was indisposed after that. The collective council sniggered, they knew what that meant. What we have gotten so far are vagaries and general information. Tell us exactly what was said from the moment they were announced to the moment the boy knocked you unconscious, in one move. Kaharu spoke for the first time. The advisor had seen 4 different Hokages, and had given poisoned and foolish advice for every single one. They had finally gotten a Hokage in power whose views lined up with their views, and went with Danzo's master plan in event of his death. It was ironic that the one to blindly carry out those plans would be the same person who killed Danzo. The meeting continued, with every single detail of the wedding ceremony being poured over. In the end, it was decided that nothing useful had been gleaned. They already knew nearly everything. The only new information was that Naruto had been granted an immediate and private audience. They would need to be wary. Fire Daimyo's palace, same day as council meeting. The daimyo was kind enough to grant them a week to think about his plan, before he would need to take other steps which Naruto had agreed would be far less desirable. They had been determined to make the most of it. They swiftly learned what the other liked, both in bed and out of it. Being in a team for nearly 2 years had resulted in a lot of up-close and personal time. They already knew each other's bad habits, which meant only positive surprises remained. Naruto and Hanabi had left their rooms a grand total of twice after their second meeting with the daimyo, to go sightseeing and stock up on food. The rest was spent in bed, or in their own personal onsen. But the relaxation time would soon be over. The newlyweds sat in their hot tub, trying to make heads or tails of the situation they found themselves in. In some ways, their escape from Konoha had gone perfectly, in others, not so much. Naruto was leaned up against the wooden side of the tub, grateful it had been designed with comfort in mind so he barely noticed it digging it into his back, with Hanabi sat with her back in between his legs. His arms were loosely wrapped around her waist, absent-mindedly stroking the side of her bare stomach. Hanabi cracked a smile. So, what are we going to do? Naruto pulled her more tightly against him. I think that accepting the daimyo's offer is our only choice. As much as I hate it, at some point Konoha is going to come after us. If we had no one there we cared about, then we could just disappear. Spring Country would be a good place for that. But if we do, they'll start on our loved ones to find us. Enough people have died defending me. She scoffed. They died because of power-hungry men, not for you. And most of them would have left you for dead if it wasn't the world at stake. You're lucky I love you, because this self-defacing act gets old." Naruto laughed at her claim. "And how do you mean that?" He could practically hear Hanabi roll her eyes even as she settled deeper into his embrace. "I mean that you blame yourself for too many things that were not your fault. It's a hero thing, I guess. They all seem to do it. At least they seem to in books, and you do it. That's all the experience I have with heroes." "Stop that." As she spoke, Naruto had been nuzzling her neck, laying tiny kisses up and down the skin of the curve. "I'm trying to be angry here." He kept going, slowly administering kisses even while his hands started massaging her legs. Hanabi groaned as he worked. "Nope, you're not allowed to be angry. Not right now." Each word was punctuated by a further press of his lips to her neck, and a tiny shiver of pleasure from the girl. "We have one more day, and we're going to make the most of it." Hanabi gave up on the serious stuff. If Naruto didn't want to be serious, he wouldn't be, and nothing could change that. She leaned back into him, laying her head on his shoulder and twisting her neck to meet his lips in a searing kiss. His hands had just started moving to her hips to twist her around when bang, bang, bang. The door to their suite shook from the force of the knocks. "Oh, come on." Naruto, reluctantly, released his gorgeous, and practically naked, wife and stepped out of the onsen to throw a robe around his shoulders. He noticed that Hanabi seemed just as put out as him, and filed it away to help stroke his ego later. He muttered unintelligibly as he traipsed his way to the door. Hanabi raised an eyebrow at his childish exploits, as she too found something to cover herself, settling on drying herself and getting fully clothed. The lilac-eyed girl knew he did it to make her laugh, and that made it easier to bear. Minutes later he re-entered, his face falling at her fully clothed state. "It's just the time for our meeting with the Daimyo tomorrow." Hanabi nodded and gave a creepily Sasuke-like grunt. Naruto scowled. That your only reaction?" She nodded again. He didn't know what he was expecting, or why he was irritated. Wait, yes he did. He evaluated his wife's clothing. She was just wearing a t-shirt and a skirt. In a flash he had her pressed against a wall, one hand lifting her by the curve of her buttocks, the other sneaking under her shirt. "We won't be this comfortable, or alone, after tomorrow." She wordlessly agreed, snaking her arms around his neck even as he began slowly rubbing the underside of her S. "Just shut up, stop teasing me and see if we can overload this anti-pregnancy seal." Naruto smirked, his lower hand tracing the outline of her underwear before slipping under it. Challenge accepted. As they entered the audience chamber the next day, Naruto was still smirking. Hanabi disguised a limp by hanging onto his arm as they walked. She managed to do the impossible. She glared at him while looking completely innocent to everyone else in the room. Must be a girl thing. She also managed to hiss angrily at him without losing the courtly smile on her lips. If Naruto wasn't so smug, it might have been worth investigating whether it was a genjutsu. "Shut up, Naruto. I didn't say anything." They were early, so settled into the corner of the room to wait. The bustle of courtiers and politicians around them below their notice. Their attention was on far more important matters. "You didn't have to." "You're right, I didn't." "Shut up. I don't understand. You seemed quite happy last night." "I feel violated." She ignored his logic. "You challenged my manliness, I accepted. The limp is entirely your fault. Then why are you so smug?" Naruto decided to make a peace offering. Although he had no parents and had never learned the rightful place of a man in a relationship, he had a sneaky suspicion that angering a woman close to you was a bad idea. He was right, and was so close to discovering the piece of information that would make every man's life easier. Women are always right. They are also secretly, or in some cases not so secretly, in charge of the world. Naruto leaned close to her ear. "I got to make love to the most beautiful woman in the world last night. What man on this earth wouldn't feel a little smug at that?" He brushed her temple with his lips, "and best of all, I got to see her enjoy it almost as much as I did." Contrary to popular belief, flattery gets you everywhere. That fact was testified to by the faint pink blush manifesting on Hanabi's cheeks and ears. Compliment appearance, check. She raised an eyebrow, and spoke in a dry voice, a wry smile raising one corner of her, very kissable in Naruto's opinion, and he was only holding back because of the presence of 100 stuffy old men, lips. "Keep going." He took his arm from hers, prompting a mew of disappointment. But it was silenced when he held her close to him by the waist. Public display of affection, check. I don't think I tell you I love you enough, but I don't want you to ever forget that fact. I never thought I'd have someone as perfectly imperfect as you. You get angry and upset at little things, but you're so damned cute when you do. You talk in your sleep, but I can't help smiling. I love everything about you. I love that you can kick all kinds of butt. I love that you have a temper to match your name, most of all. I just love you. Undying declarations of love, check. It worked, she sighed and relaxed into his hug. They were drawing glances, a mixture of smiles and disapproving sneers. Her eyes were closed and didn't notice. Naruto just didn't give a fuck. He didn't care that he was 19 and she a barely legal 16. She was his wife anyway. They could do whatever the hell they wanted. He didn't care that others might view their behavior as unacceptable. He could count the number of people whose opinions he gave a flying toss about on the fingers of one hand. And he could think of a much better use for that hand, several in fact. While he was lost in the possibilities of various hand signals in a myriad of times and places. They were called forward. The daimyo wordlessly left his throne to lead them to the same small chamber their previous two meetings had taken place. Sasuke was alone in his office. The paperwork was all done, he had sent his Anbu away. Crickets chirped and the pale moonlight glimmered through a slit in the blinds. Cursing, the black-haired Hokage stood, shifting the blinds slightly, plunging the room into complete blackness. There was no sound to betray the appearance of the person behind him, not even the whisper of displacing air. But the Uchiha knew he was there. Kakashi? It was a mere formality, but one they had established over 3 years of secret meetings. As per tradition, Kakashi didn't answer. It was unnecessary. Are you tired of being dead? It is time then. Yes. Tell Shikamaru, tell him I said thanks, and that I'm truly sorry about Ino and Choji. That wasn't what I wanted to happen. Silence, then his old teacher spoke. I know, just be sure to tell Sakura. It tore her apart to hurt Naruto for that. And she never asked for the reason. Sasuke sighed. So damned much had happened that he had not expected. I will. I have to get a message to Naruto at some time. I need you to do that. You know what to say. Sasuke spoke in a monotone drawl, much like his trademark grunts of his younger days. But unlike in public, a weariness could be heard in his voice. Sometimes he wondered if it was worth it. Sometimes he wondered if he was making a mistake. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.